The month of March was one of the 10 warmest on record for Nebraska, while also being the second driest since 1895. In the Panhandle, Nebraska Extension educator Berger says the pattern of above normal temperatures with below normal precipitation is concerning. This comes as many farmers and ranchers in the state are preparing to turn cattle out to graze pastures and ranges. Aaron joined us from Scottsbluff on Monday and said producers may want to be thinking about trigger dates and stocking rates because output on those lands can vary from year to year.
Yeah, we can see tremendous variation in forage production based on precip, based on the health of that range the year before, moisture that came the year before, but really critical for precipitation, or really critical for grass growth, is precipitation during those rapid growth windows. For a cool season dominated, it's going to be April, May, June. If you're in the sandhills and you're more warm season dominated, really May, June, July are critical. You know, we can see 5 to 7 times difference in terms of forage production based on the year. So maybe on average we're around 12 to 1,500 pounds, but we can drop that all the way down to maybe 400 to 500 pounds, all the way up to 2,500 pounds, depending on the precip you get and the timing it comes in, and also the health of the rangeland with that.
Tell me how a trigger date can help a producer in their grazing plan.
Yeah, so I think it's important to think about trigger dates and having some dates in mind. We're going to make some decisions from a stocking rate standpoint, either to reduce stocking based on the precip that's available, or I should say precip that's happened and soil moisture available. And so I think for cool season dominated rangeland, April's kind of the first one, April 1st, then late April to early May we take a second time, really thinking about the moisture available, looking at how much we've had. And then on a cool season standpoint, somewhere around June 1st is another one. And so if we've had really dry conditions, we don't have much soil moisture in the profile, we need to be thinking about how we're going to reduce our stocking rates, things like delaying turnout, maybe dry lotting some cattle, things like that, to just plan for reduced forage production. If we're thinking about warm season, we have a little later in terms of trigger dates, probably May 1st, June 1st, July 1st would be kind of 3 trigger dates. Again, looking at moisture that's in the profile, looking at the precip we've already had. Another tool available to us is kind of some long-range forecasts, and the Drought Monitor has a nice 30 to 45-day forecast that can give us some indication of where we think things are going. Currently, the pattern for the western half to third of the state has been kind of concerning from moisture we've had in March and early April. We've had a little bit, but not enough. And so also the snowpacks are down, and the Drought Monitor shows an increasing area of drought in those areas.
What does that mean, Aaron? I mean, we're in mid-April. You had mentioned, this time you'd know something or at least get a hint of something. Does that mean that producers should start planning differently?
Yeah, I think at this point as a producer, I think I'd be looking at the forage I have on hand. Many people had a good year last year, but also planning probably for, especially on cool season dominated, that we're going to have less grass growth. Already things like threadleaf sedge and needle and thread, some of those are already starting to get kicked off, and we've just not had the moisture we need to really get those going. What's also concerning is also just the long-range forecast is we're not looking at a wet pattern, and so already beginning to plan on some reduction is important.
How do you know the appropriate stocking rate reduction to make on your operation?
Yeah, so as we think about appropriate reduction in stocking rate, I think first we want to look at what forage is out there currently that maybe we had in terms of residual forage from last year. And then I think we're thinking about the precip that's in the soil profile. Going out, digging a post hole, seeing what you have for moisture there is important. You know, if we're looking at 20 to 30, 40% less moisture, then I think we want to be thinking about maybe a 10 to 15% reduction in stocking rate at this point. And you also want to be thinking about the health of your rangeland, and that's just going to really vary with what people have available. And so it's really going to depend a little bit on case by case on what your situation is.
Finally, Aaron, are there different lease considerations to take into account on a year like this when you are maybe a little bit more concerned about the moisture situation?
Yeah, I think those who own land and are leasing it to livestock owners need to have a conversation around how are we going to handle things if there's a drought situation. Currently, there's a government program, the Livestock Forage Disaster Program, that will compensate livestock owners in the case of a drought for the grazing loss that occurs. So the challenge becomes is there's a lot of situations in Nebraska and other states where pasture is rented on a per head per day basis. So the landowner rents it to the person who brings the livestock on a so much per head per day basis. In that situation, unless the livestock owner can constitute risk or show risk in the pasture, as the law reads, or as the program reads, they cannot get paid because if they're just paying on a per head per day basis. So I'm encouraging landowners and livestock owners to look at moving towards a paying on a per acre basis, and then still having a drought clause in place that if a drought occurs, they somehow figure out how to mitigate that or work through that on a payment basis. But that then provides a situation where the livestock owner has the opportunity to collect on this livestock forage disaster program payment.
Aaron also encourages producers to make sure their leases meet the requirements of the Livestock Forage Disaster Program. He advises farmers and ranchers to visit with their local FSA office to make sure what they have in place will allow them to collect on the program if necessary.